friends, welcome back to my channel. And in today's video, Bane is going to hit the tripod repeatedly and make the whole video shake. But in today's vlog, I will be reading The Night Circus. So I have read this, and I have said that The Night Circus is my favorite book of all time, and I need to know if that's true. I read this author's other works, The Starless Sea, when it came out, I believe, in 2020, and I really loved it. I thought it was, you know, fantastic, beautiful, lush, decadent, amazing. Want to go back and reread The Night Circus and see how I feel 11 years later, because I read it in 2011 when it came out. So I was a sophomore in high school. It's been quite a many years. My life is very different. My reading style, my reading taste is very different. The bare bones of this is it's about two magicians who are raised from an early age to battle each other out. And the platform in which they do this is a circus called The Night Circus. This is again a very lush story. It's about a night circus. It's about a circus that only shows up at night. It's all very magical. And it's just, Erin Morgenstern's writing is truly spectacular, truly one of a kind. If you are a fan of flowery writing, purple prose, things like that, then I'm sure you have read or at least heard of Erin Morgenstern. So we are going to see how I feel about my favorite book of all time 11 years later. Let's get into the vlog portion of the video and see how this goes. Okay friends, I am through part 1 of The Night Circus, which is called Primordium. And this is basically all set up for the rest of the story. And we have met our predominant cast of characters at this point. I'm not going to attempt to tell you what their names are or call them all by their names, because a lot of them are like French or names that I just don't want to butcher. But so you start off the story meeting Celia and Marco, and they were both raised by magicians. So Marco's father is a guy that got him out of the orphanage that he was in and trained him to, you know, do magic and stuff. And he kind of abandoned Marco a lot. He didn't really try to interact with him in any way, so Marco sort of raised himself. And then Celia is left after her mother commits suicide to the care of her father, who equally doesn't really take care of her, but at least he's like there. Once she gets a little bit older, she starts being left alone. But in the beginning of the story, her father and Marco's mentor make a proposition with each other that they will have a magician, two magicians that go against each other. We don't really know the stakes or like what that's going to entail, but we just know that that is going, like, that's the bet that they have going, and then we follow them. So I would say about 40 to 50 pages in, Marco, at the behest of his mentor, starts working for a guy who is a theater director, and he starts pulling in all of these different characters to craft this moving night circus that is supposed to be like super extraordinary. And at this point it's unclear if any of them know or do magic. So at this point we just know that Marco and Celia, and then Celia's father Esperio can do some sort of magic or tricks or something like that. And Celia's father is a magician who like disguises himself as a fake magician, so people think that his tricks are fake, but he's actually doing real tricks, and he teaches her how to do them. And both of them, Celia and Marco's mentors, are very brutal. The bond between them is sealed with a ring that absorbed into their finger, but like cut into their finger basically. Celia's dad repeatedly breaks her bones to teach her how to mend them, and Marco, I can't remember, I don't think Marco, like, anything has happened to Marco physically that I can recall, but he still has the mentor that's largely absent. But he does have a girlfriend or just like a lover or something like that named Isabel, who once he discovers Celia is going to be working within the circus and she's who his rival is, he puts Isabel in place to spy, I guess, because Marco will have to remain in London and Isabel and Celia will be traveling with the circus. And so basically this whole point of the circus is that they're trying to like one up each other through different things involved in the circus, and we've kind of just gotten the plans for the circus, or we've seen them planning the circus and gotten one part where it's like a clock that becomes a central part of the circus. So entering into part 2 is called Illumination, and I'm enjoying it. It's actually not as hard to read as I remember it being. Granted, I read this when I was like 15, so I've obviously read a lot of stories between now and then, but it's not quite as flowery as The Starless Sea. If you've read The Starless Sea and you wanted to know whether you should try the Night Circus, it's not quite that flowery yet. But we have gotten brief descriptions of the circus through this kid named Bailey, who is a kid in the future who sees the circus in his town, and he meets a girl after he's dared to break into the circus during the daytime. Something that I love about this book is the majority of the planning and such, like it's a build up to Bailey's present chapters. It's set in like it's set in the late 1800s, and then Bailey's chapters are set in the early 1900s, and it almost feels like they're happening at a parallel time. I think with this, the way that this feels so magical, it almost feels like it's happening on top of each other, like almost a multiverse sort of idea. It's an interesting feeling, and I know that's like not an interpretation that you're supposed to have, because obviously the dates are there, but that's just how it feels to me, and it adds a layer of like magic to it, because you are just getting these chapters of Bailey's spliced in occasionally, and so it just feels like things are happening all at the same time, and it's a delightful little piece of magic. I will update you when I am done with this part. It starts at page 93 and goes until 225-ish. 222. So I'll probably update you then. At this point, I don't have too much to say in regards to like the romance or the circus or anything, because obviously it's very much set up, but I'm still enjoying it. It's still a very gripping read, and I just love her writing, regardless of whether it's quite at the Starless Sea level or a little bit toned down. It's still beautiful either way, and just very like atmospheric and immersive. So I'm definitely enjoying it, and I don't know if it'll quite be as I don't want to say that too early. I don't want to say like maybe I won't hold it in high regard like I did for pretty much since I read it, but I don't want to ruin that for myself. So I will update you when I am done with part 2, and I'll let you know how I feel then. Okay friends, I have finished 2 parts of the Night Circus since we last talked, and I wanted to do an update. So part 2 is called Illumination, and it is the largest part of the book. And then part 3 is Intersections, and it's pretty short. I think it's only 100 pages. It is from 222 to 296. So in part 2, like I said, it's the longest, and my camera is dying, so we might just get through part 2, and then I'll update you when I'm back at my house with my other battery. Yeah, beginning of the part, the circus has opened. It is opening night, and you are following the circus through, I think it ends at like 12 years, the thing being open for 12 years, and you're following multiple points of view just like you did in the first part, and you're seeing the effects of the circus on not only the people that come, but also the people that are part of the circus, and you are getting predominantly chapters from Bailey's point of view, in which he is talking about the circus from an outsider's perspective, and then every other point of view, like Celia, Marco, all of them, are talking about the behind the scenes, how the circus functions, and you're not seeing too much of the circus itself. And I would say the largest part of this part that becomes glaringly obvious is that, especially towards the end, the circus has a massive effect on the people that are in it. From the people that created the circus to the people that are actually like performing in it, they don't seem to age, and they seem to be very outside, out of touch with reality. And this actually ends up getting to one of the women who was a collaborator beginning the circus, and something happens with her, and this sort of starts a chain of events that shows the cracks in the circus. Is mostly what part 2 is about, is this undercurrent of dread and that something is not right, and then also the whimsy and the wonder of the circus, and then also the budding romance between Celia and Marco, and this repeated motif of the game of it all, and they're kind of breaking the rules of the game. They're collaborating, they're working together, they're falling in love. And that's kind of just the path that the plot takes. I will say that this is not a very plot or character heavy book. This is very much a vibes book. This is very much like a book all about appreciating the writing and the whimsy of it all and the circus. It's not really a whole lot to do with character growth, and I'll sort of discuss that at the end. And then in part 3 is really where the cracks start to show, and it's multiple points of view of different people in the circus kind of questioning what's going on and starting to see the rot of the circus and how things are going wrong, and also some characters are trying to save the circus. We finished part 3 with Celia and Marco having sex and the death of someone close to the circus. So that's now been 2 deaths in the circus, and people are starting to question what's going on. Celia and Marco want to kind of break whatever is going on at the circus, and they're trying to figure out how. Marco is kind of being a little bit sketchy with the people around him. He has made some moves behind the scenes that we don't really see, as has Celia. He has all of these moving parts, basically, that he has to maintain, as does Celia. And it's starting to wear on everybody and wear on the circus. And Widget and Poppet are 2 twins who were born the night that the circus, the first opening night of the circus, and they seem to have some sort of magical abilities, and they are trying to rescue the circus via Bailey, and we don't really know how, but they're sort of the conduit for the future of the circus. They're the ones that yep, it cut off right when I was talking. So I think I was talking about Widget and Poppet. So they were the twins that were born on the opening day of the circus, and they seem to have these magical abilities. Widget, who is the male part of the fraternal twins, can read things on people, like the past and thoughts and things like that. And then Poppet, she can read the future through the stars and things like that. And so they are sort of the conduit through which foreshadowing happens. So one of them will mention that something is going to happen, and then it'll happen. I don't necessarily think that this book is meant to be, like, it's meant to just be you there along for the ride. There's a lot of stuff happening in the background that you don't really know a lot about. It's almost as if you are a circus goer and you're seeing the behind the scenes, but you're not really seeing how it's coming together until something happens and it gets explained by one of the characters. So it's not really the most, like, plot driven, but it's also not the most character driven because the characters aren't super fleshed out and addressed. The same could be said about The Starless Sea. The characters feel like characters, if that makes sense. So it's very much about the whimsy and the writing and you just being along for the ride. That is sort of what's happened. The cracks are starting to show in the circus, and as the lovers get closer and closer, things start to unravel. One of the Isabel, who I mentioned previously, is a woman that Marco was dating, and he sort of used her as his like go-between, and they didn't have like the best romantic relationship. Like it was very much like she was way more into it than he was, and she put a spell of protection on the circus to make sure that like the balance stayed even between the two. And when Marco tells her that their relationship is ending and that he's in love with Celia, she like gets rid of that spell of protection, and so everything is just unbalanced at this point. And so we are then going into part 5, Incendiary, which is from 296 to 366. And then the last part is obviously from 372 to the end of the book, which is 387. So these two coming up are quite short, and I will likely just read them and then come back to you with final thoughts on the book, if it has lived up to my thoughts, how I've held it in high esteem and regard since I was 15, and where it stands in my favorite books of all time. I failed to mention this because it slips my mind, but I have not reread this book since I was 15, the first time I read it. I have not reread it since the first time. Why did I just say that twice? You get it? I remember everything. I remember every scene that happens. I remember all of it. It's wild that I have read so many books between then and now. You could ask me about a book that I read a year ago, and I probably wouldn't have the same recollection. I might not even be able to tell you the plot of the book, but I can remember everything about this. That's how vivid this story is. Okay friends, I finished the last 2 parts of The Night Circus, and I am disappointed to say that this ended up being a 4-star. I get why 15-year-old me loved this book, and I get why people love it now. I think I was just missing some parts of this that I wanted more of. I wanted to understand the characters more. This is 100% a book for people that go in and they just are along for the ride, and they are not looking to read anything critical, which by no means is a bad thing, and it's something that I often do. I'm often a non-critical reader. I just go in and enjoy a book, and that's kind of what I tried to do with this as well. And I think because I was enjoying parts of this so much, there was stuff that I was lacking. Like, I wanted those characters. I wanted to fall in love with the romance. I wanted to care about the characters as much as I cared about the circus and all of that. And in the last 2 parts, you're seeing the accumulation of all of the cracks that have been happening with the circus. And I wanted to care about the people we lost and the way the story ended and all of that. And I just didn't really, and that's kind of sad to say because this was one of my, what I would consider one of my favorite books of all time, and I just don't feel that way on the reread, which is perfectly okay. Like, I definitely would continue reading Aaron Morgenstern, and I'm not planning on rereading The Starless Sea because that just has such a soft spot in my heart that I just don't want to ruin it by rereading the book, or possibly ruin it. This is a good book for people who just want an experience. They just want to go in, they want to be swept up into beautiful writing and just be transported to another world, and they don't care to connect to anything in the story. Like, they want to just read it and appreciate the writing and then set it down and not think about the characters or anything again. And that's just not the sort of reader that I am. That's where we are. So this ended up being a 4-star. I would like to see, this story is kind of left a little bit open-ended, and I would like to see this maybe continued by her, but done with an emphasis on other things. Like, given how she wrote The Starless Sea, I don't necessarily think that she cares to emphasize characters. I went through and read some 2-star reviews, and like, I agree that the characters are very flat, and it's hard to connect to the love story and all of it. Like, there are definitely moments between them that I like felt it in my heart, but not enough. So yes, unfortunately, this went from being an all-time favorite to just like a good book. 4-star. Good, above average, fantastic writing, very transportive, but not perfect. And I would have liked more. So that is it. That is the reading vlog for Night Circus. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on this book. Have you read it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I would love to know. If you don't have anything to say, leave a circus emoji down in the comments. If you're looking for more content from me, make sure you check out my Instagram and my podcast Instagram. You can also check out my podcast on all your favorite streaming platforms. It is a horror podcast. It's a lot of fun. And thank you so much for watching. I will catch you guys in my next one.